More thankful as well. Oh, a couple of comments first. Thank you. That was a good reminder. We are re-recording today's session. Also, if you have any questions or comments, please go into the chat room. Our featured speaker of the day is graciously saying that he wants to take the questions as they come. So Angela Gibbs will be coordinating all of that and letting us know about those changes. If you Also, Angela is going to be putting in the chat room as soon as our featured speaker has a deck that he's going to share with us today. And as soon as that comes up, Angela will put in how you can actually access that deck. I would like to welcome, on behalf of United Way of the Big Bend, Dr. Mark McNeese. He's a founding faculty member of the Jim Moran College of Entrepreneurship at Florida State University. He is also the founder of Red Eye Coffee, a social impact company, served on the board of directors for the Greater Tallahassee Chamber of Commerce, and is the principal of the McNeese Group, an innovation and corporate responsibility consultant. Mark earned his doctorate in organizational leadership, and as part of his commitment to lifelong learning, he earned a master's extension in innovation and entrepreneurship from Harvard University in 2020. Over the past decade, Mark has worked with organizations in North and South America, Africa, Asia, and Europe to flip organizational challenges into opportunities. He draws upon his experience as an innovator, founder, and CEO, which is supported by his education in innovation, corporate culture, and leadership to help companies create a culture of innovation, maximize assets, and develop strategic messaging that communications, mission, and purpose are for its stakeholders. One of the things that I've had a chance to know Mark over the years, and I can tell you what he loves and what he does through his work is he serves people and he gives back. Dr. Mark McNeese, welcome. We look forward to hearing your speech today and your presentation today. Please go ahead. You're on mute. There you go.
Sorry, a big truck came right up next to me. I apologize. I had to change venues. My house is getting painted, and my daughter dropped off her dog, and my dog was, or her dog was barking. So I had to quickly find a new place. So there may be a little bit of distraction. I'm sorry about that. So thank you very much for having me, Bernice and Angela. I'm excited to be here. I have lived the nonprofit life as well, and as Bernice said, I started Red Eye Coffee and things like that, and super happy to be here today. When I was asked to give this talk, and just thinking about how do nonprofits get into social entrepreneurship, especially if they want to start an integrated auxiliary or a for-profit business to help support the cause. I kind of came up, one of my favorite movies is The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly with Clint Eastwood. So I kind of used the Clint Eastwood theme, and I titled this the Good, the Bad, and the Ugly of starting a social enterprise as a nonprofit or as an ED. So and again, if you have any questions along the way, I'd like to do this more conversational, and so just feel free to ask questions, and I'll field them as they come, or as Angela brings them up. So let me bring up my deck really quick. And again, this deck will be available on markmcneese.com. I always upload all my talks decks there, so you don't have to worry about it. So as Bernice mentioned, I'm a founding faculty member of the Jim Moran College. FSU in 2014 recruited me to come help start their social entrepreneurship ecosystem. Since then, I've been able to help FSU create a minor in social entrepreneurship, an undergrad in social entrepreneurship, and now a major in social entrepreneurship that launched last fall. So we're really excited and proud about that. Also, as she mentioned, I do consulting work. I've worked with hundreds of nonprofits and entrepreneurs throughout the years, helping them make their vision a reality. And as she mentioned, probably why I'm here today is to talk a little bit about my experience of being a church planner. I planted Element 3 Church back in 2003. And then in 2004, I started Red Eye Coffee as as a way to drive revenues to the bottom line, to be able to support our causes, and through the church and through the other nonprofits that we were able to start, and through Red Eye, we've been able to have not only a local impact but a global impact in it. But it hasn't always been easy, and I think I've learned some things along the way that I want to share with you. So before we get started, is there any questions, Angela, yet?
Not yet, thank you.
Okay, great. So again, the good and the bad and the ugly of a nonprofit. At the end, I'm going to tell you would I do it all again here, not sitting in 2022, and so and give you so we're just going to go through it, and I'll tell you all about it at the end. So the first thing is, before we get in the good, the bad, and the ugly, there's some real considerations before you start, before you go into this exciting world of like, all the possibilities of, what could we do with a for-profit that our nonprofit owns. And the first thing is to be ridiculously clear on the reason you're starting a for-profit business. If I could do it all again, this is one thing that just making sure that not only you're ridiculously clear with your stakeholders, but you in your mind are ridiculously clear on the reason that you are going on this venture, because it's not always just to increase your budget. It could be other things, which we'll talk about. So okay, so the good. Let's start with the good. So the first thing is that one thing that being out in the wild is that it could give you great community exposure. One of the greatest things about starting Red Eye was I was able to be able to meet the community. I was able to be out there and earn their trust every single day, and be able to have conversations with people, which led to other things that we were doing in Tallahassee. Get to talk about Serve Tallahassee and the I think it was 76 families that we supplemented their nutritional needs every single week, or talk about what we were doing in Haiti, starting a nursing school in Haiti, or filming a documentary in Benin, in the continent of Africa, about child trafficking. And just and the reality is, like, your nonprofits are doing amazing things, but it's really hard to get the message out, right? It's really hard to find partners outside of people who are just in your natural network. And so one of the biggest values, I think, of starting a for-profit business is that it gives you access to a whole new network. And through that business, as Bernice mentioned, I was able to sit on the board of the Chamber of Commerce, and I got to meet Bernice and a whole bunch of other really great people. And that really became champions of the cause. And a lot of those people are afflicted with affluence, and we were able to help them invest in community projects and global projects that they really cared about. As I mentioned, another good thing is it has the potential to supplement your nonprofit's budget. I lived being a pastor for 18 years, and essentially a church is a faith-based nonprofit, right? So fundraising and development and all that was a really normal part of my day, and I'm sure it's part of your day. And one of the great things is when things are going well, like, it can drive a lot of resources. And the church was able to do, or partner with Red Eye to do, a lot of things that it would have never been able to do, because their operating budget just would not have supported it. And because we were able to basically have an agnostic coffee house that had several locations uh, and was able to partner with Tallahassee, Tallahassee's impact was, global. And I mean, that's why our slogan when I was part of Red Eye was drink coffee locally, change lives globally. And we were able to fulfill that mission. And then also, it also starting to integrated auxiliary or a for-profit potentially helps you resource your stakeholders. What I mean by this, and I think there's some really great examples here in Tallahassee. One is Goodwill, and I'm sure you've all seen by Premier right off of Thomasville, the car wash that Goodwill took over. And I look at that, and that's a really eloquent way of starting a for-profit business that doesn't not only drives revenue to the bottom line, but also resources the stakeholders and the people that you are serving in your nonprofit. One of the really cool things that Rick Carney did when he started the Carney Center was that part of the contracts with the contractors was that unskilled labor that they would hire the homeless. And it's been several years since since that's happened, but like afterwards, the success rate was really exceptional. That a lot of those previously homeless people were able to get jobs and get into homes. And so having like really clarity and intentionality can really support the mission of your nonprofit. And it doesn't have to be just money. It can be all sorts of things. At Red Eye, we were able to hire several people who were previously incarcerated and just really couldn't get work. And we were able to give people a second chance, much like what Dave's Killer Bread does at a much larger scale. So before I get in the bad, is there any questions about the good?
Yes, we have a question about whether you need to have investors before you're engaging in the auxiliary. And if you can provide some examples of supplementing a nonprofit budget.
Yeah, absolutely. So for-profits, and please check, I'm not a lawyer or a tax accountant, so laws change all the time. And the laws are different for nonprofits than they are churches. Churches integrated auxiliary can have up to half of their budget supplemented by a for-profit. I believe it's 30% for a nonprofit, but please check on that to make sure. Yeah, but so for-profits, on the other hand, can give 10% of their profits to a designated nonprofit, and that's tax deductible. But there's also other things that for-profits can do that supplement a nonprofit's business, like marketing or doing events and partnering in events and different things like that. And this is where a really good accountant comes in, is to make sure you don't lose your tax status. So I really like, before you go really too far in depth, I would connect or too far down the road, definitely connect with your CPA to make sure that you're not jeopardizing your tax status. But it is very, very normal for nonprofits like Goodwill to operate, for-profit businesses like their clothing stores and like the car wash and things like that. So it's definitely, you're able to do it. As far as raising support, the way I did it was I started Red Eye in 2004. It was we didn't have a brick and mortar until 2009, but I just started small. I met a roaster, a local roaster who didn't know how to sell coffee, and I didn't know how to roast coffee, but I knew how to sell things. So I started just buying coffee and putting it in smaller bags and selling it to friends and family, much like the Girl Scouts sell cookies. And all the profits went to local and global empowerment charities. That got a lot of traction. And in 2008, I had met several people here in Tallahassee by then. My network had grown. So I actually got investors to put up the money. So it was separate. It was very separate from the church's money. That they gave a designated gift to start Red Eye, and we were able to do that. And the vision, I was very clear on the vision of what we were going to do. It was very much the Newman's Own model that 100% of the profits were going to go to local and global empowerment charities, and we were going to be really intentional with those charities to make sure that they were agnostic, but held the values that people in the church also had. So we kind of walked a tightrope a little bit, but at least my faith tradition is to serve the least of these, and that's what we did. And most decent people would agree that serving people who are underrepresented is a good thing. So did I answer the question, Angela? Or
I believe so. Thank you.
all right. Anything else before we get into the bad?
I have something. You and I talked at one point, Dr. McNeese, about how you were sourcing the coffee beans. You had an incredible story about that whenever you first started Red Eye. I don't want to take you off topic. That may take you off topic a little bit, but also it leans in on your care for people. So if you don't mind, if you'd share just a brief overview of that.
Yeah, absolutely. So what Bernice is referring to is when I first started Red Eye, it was not sophisticated at all. It was all about how much money could I drive to charities. And I didn't really understand the power of supply chain and owning a for-profit business. And when I do consulting, I really challenge business owners to look at their supply chain, because you can do a lot of good through how you source your needs, your products and things like that. So I was traveling quite a bit, visiting farms that we were buying coffee from. And one day I was picking coffee next to a little girl. She was about 9, 10 years old, and I was picking coffee with her and just talking with her. And I just happened to notice some children about her age were walking to school with their school bags and everything. And I asked her why she wasn't going to school. And she said, I don't go to school. I can't go to school because my family needs me to work so we can eat. And that little girl, she probably, weighed, 35, 40 pounds. She wasn't very big, but she floored me. It was such a powerful moment where I'm thinking, I'm charging people $5, $6 for the coffee she's picking in Tallahassee, and she can't even go to school. And not only am I doing that, I'm taking the profits and putting them right back into their neighborhood to help build houses for single mothers. And when I got back from that trip, I called an emergency board meeting, and I just said, we're not doing this anymore. We're not going to exploit children and farmers, so we can feel good about ourselves and send them back charity. They work harder than us, and these people love their children as much as we love our children, and we need to change how we do things. And so that's when we at Red Eye became committed to ethical trade and direct sourcing, and making and thinking about our philanthropy in a different way. One, paying people a fair price for the materials, or the coffee, in our case, coffee and tea, paying them what a living a wage and a fair price, and then also giving scholarships and building back into the communities that we were buying coffee from. So, and kind of the same thing happened why we went 100% organic is because I just saw the harm that the chemicals, fertilizers were doing to the environment and lakes and things like that. So yeah, I look back and I should have known better, but I didn't until I experienced it. And you know, you'll all you can be held responsible for is making a change when you get additional information. So yeah, thank you for giving me the opportunity to share that story, Bernice.
That really was impactful to me whenever you shared that, because you acted immediately. I mean, basically, almost as soon as you got off the flight back home, you walked in and had that meeting.
I did.
Are there any more questions, Angela, in the chat, so that we don't keep him from moving on? Or if anybody has a question, please feel free to put it in the chat.
We are good to go.
All right. Well, let's get to the bad then. We won't stay too long on the bad, but this is again just to make you aware. It's not all roses, right? So one thing that we experienced was mission drift. Mostly not necessarily with me, but with stakeholders who weren't in the trenches every single day, and people started wondering, like, okay, are we a church? Are we a coffee shop? And especially when the coffee shop became bigger than the church, like a lot more of those conversations started happening, and really, especially people who were not the pilgrims, who were not there when we started it, but people who were settlers who came after we did it. There was people didn't really understand how Red Eye really supported and encouraged the mission of the church. Then also just confusion. What's the priority? And there was, and what we were kind of a victim of our own success, because again, most everybody in Tallahassee, I think, at least if they're coffee drinkers, have at least heard of Red Eye, and it would get a lot of press, and a lot of people would talk about it, and like what it was doing, and it was confusing to a lot of our stakeholders. Also, this is a big one for the ED, that divided attention. Now you have two children, right? It's not just like this for-profit that runs itself. I don't care how great of a manager you have or anything. It's going to divide your attention, because ultimately, you as the ED are going to answer to the board, and for what happens or doesn't happen at your for-profit. And that can be really, really challenging, because things don't always go right. And when they go bad, it's challenging. In fact, I think that's the next slide. Oh, no, this is the ugly. So before I get into the ugly, is there any questions about the bad?
No, I don't see any. Thank you.
All right, great. Okay, so the ugly. When bad times come, and they will, things will get really ugly. And I think on my next slide, when the money's flowing in, you as the ED is a hero. When you're able to, donate $10,000, $100,000 and do something that your nonprofit probably couldn't have done without the for-profit, everybody's chanting your name, and getting standing huge applause and accolations and all that. But if there's ever a loss, even if it's $1, you go from hero to zero really fast. That was a really hard lesson, and a really ugly lesson, that, and in the nonprofit world, simplicity a lot of times is king. It reigns. And the more complicated you get, the more confusion there is, and it can become really, really challenging. And Red Eye went through a few years that, you know, were really, really challenging. And we weren't able to give the amount of money that we were able to give previously. I had made some poor decisions on scaling that I learned hard lessons from. And if you remember, you know, we were one of the first businesses in Bannerman Crossings, and that was a huge loser for us. And we were until we got out of that, it was eating up just about all our profits from the other stores. And what we were able to do as far as donations had really dropped off. And as soon as that dropped off, there was a lot of tough conversations, and then people who didn't really like a nonprofit owning a for-profit business became very, very vocal, and it became a very, very challenging time. And you know, and I would try to remind them, like, hey, you know, there's a nursing school in Haiti because, you know, because of us and our efforts. And you know, we participated in building 12 houses a year in Guatemala for single mothers, you know, and there's, you know, all these homes and families that now have, and I, people have short memories, and that was really, really challenging for me. You know, through those hard times, it wasn't just hard times running the business. It was hard times just kind of justifying it to stakeholders. And then I referred to this earlier. This was really interesting to me. Subsequent stakeholders may oppose the idea of a nonprofit owning a for-profit business. So there was just a lot of people who's like, you know, that believe a nonprofit just should not have a for-profit. They think, you know, they'll cite, you know, divided mission and taking up the time of the ED, and the ED should be, you know, everybody knows what the ED should be doing except the ED, right? Everybody, and they're like, well, you should be doing this, you should be doing fundraising, you should, you know, you've all you EDs know, we live it every single day. And so you know, those stakeholders may oppose you, and that just makes a very hard job that you're already doing a lot harder.
Excuse me, Dr. McNeese, we did
Yes.
have a question since we're on the ugly.
Yeah.
That COVID-19 has impacted all nonprofits. And the question is, did you find a significant impact to you and your business during COVID-19?
And may I do add on to that, Dr. McNeese, because you were talking about, you know, what you know, the impact or some of the ugly, and I was just curious if that ugly started happening with COVID-19, because, you know, businesses were shut down, you know, et cetera. I would think that I would think personally that would have had an impact. I'm just saying, looking forward to hearing what you have to say about that.
Yeah, well, absolutely. You know, when your business model is have a bunch of people come sit closely to each other for hours, the pandemic definitely is a huge negative. You know, in all honesty, I can't blame it all on the pandemic. Again, I advocated to do a flagship store. I don't know if any of you had ever been to the Bannerman Crossing store, but it was beautiful. And we were just, in my opinion, we were just too early. There was just not enough traffic, and it came to a point where we just, you know, we couldn't justify it anymore, and that was really, really painful. And it got ugly, you know, because people forgot very quickly, like everything that Midtown has done, or the one at well, it used to be Capital Regional, it's HCA something now. You know, the kiosk there, and you know, the other Red Eye that's on Capitol Circle. And very quickly, people who weren't wild about the idea in the first place really came out of the woodwork and made things really, really difficult. So there was that bad decision, the Bannerman Crossings decision, the pandemic, and then also when I started Red Eye, there was really no, in fact, when I started Red Eye, there, believe it or not, there wasn't even a Starbucks in Tallahassee. And it was a real, what in entrepreneurship we call a blue ocean. It was wide open. And then Starbucks, and then Dunkin' Donuts, and then Lucky Goat, and then just about everybody else started jumping into the market, and then TCC got a Starbucks downtown, which was really close to our Midtown location. And the day they opened, our annual revenues went down $200,000. So there was a whole lot of competition came in. I think the combination of poor decision at Bannerman Crossings, COVID-19, and just oversaturation of coffee houses in Tallahassee really made it tough. Tough, and and obviously, when a churches really hit it too. So I had two entities that were really negatively impacted at that point. And if you've been,
You're good.
is it? Do you hear crackling? Let me switch earphones really quick. Sorry,
Okay.
or headphones or whatever. Oh, I think it's okay now. Can you hear me? Oh no. Hold on. Sorry.
I can hear you. We can hear you. Angela, can you hear us?
I'm getting a bunch of static. I don't know what's going on.
That's better.
Angela?
That's better. No,
I apologize.
no, I can hear you.
COVID-19 has also made Angela, can you say something?
Yes, I can hear you
Okay.
just fine.
Okay, great. I apologize for that. I know this is not ideal. It's the best I could do.
We understand. We've all dealt with that, Dr. Denise. Trust me. We could give you some stories on that.
Yeah, no, I know we all, dog barking and all sorts of stuff. It's like pick your poison on this. Hopefully, we get this pandemic behind us, and we can all get back together. So yeah, I kind of had a perfect storm that hit. Fortunately, I was really transitioning during that time already as well. I was really getting involved at FSU, and we had hired an amazing person to run Red Eye, Barbie Morrow, who is if you haven't heard of her, she's a rising star here in Tallahassee. I would say, in my faith tradition, I would say that she was a godsend. Where I was pretty beat up, doing 18 years of Red Eye and E3. I think Red Eye and E3 was ready for some young, fresh blood, and Barbie Morrow came in, and she's now the sole owner of Red Eye, and I could not be happier with what she's doing. I see stuff on social media, what she's doing, and it's absolutely incredible. I actually feel really bad. I didn't have time to get all the way to Midtown Red Eye to do this talk, and I'm like kind of at the other guys right now, so I'm kind of hiding out. It's kind of funny giving this talk at Starbucks, but I just couldn't make it down to Red Eye, unfortunately. But I just so that's basically, and again, I wanted to be super transparent in this talk because I wanted the nonprofits and the executive directors to really understand, hey, you know what, there's a lot of great stuff and good stuff that goes along with it, but there's some hard stuff too. And like, I never really thought, like, how do you exit? Like I just don't think about it that way. Like, I never thought about, like, what if it didn't work? Like, I just never did. And I that's one thing when I'm meeting with nonprofits who want to start a for-profit, especially a nonprofit wants to start a for-profit. It's like, okay, what's the exit strategy? Like if it's going bad, how do you get out of it? Because you have employees, you have rent, you have insurance, you have all of this stuff, and you don't own it, right? You and so you're responsible for something. You don't actually get to be like the sole proprietor to make all the decisions, and it can be really, really challenging. So before I go to the next thing, are there any other questions, Angela?
No, not at this time.
All right, great. So as I promised, I go through all the good, the bad, and the ugly, and then tell you, like, if I knew now what I knew in 2003, would I do it all again? And the truth is, hindsight is 2020, right? That's a cliche because it's true. And this is why, people hire me as a consultant, because I have almost 20 years of good stuff, and I've learned hard lessons that I can help people avoid. So so I look at it, when I look back at it and think about the sleepless nights and the hardships and everything, if you asked me, would I do the things that I did, I would say 100% yes. I don't regret any of the hardship and pain that I personally endured, because I know that there's families with homes now. I know that there's farmers and children who are able to go to school because we took a stance. I know that there are nurses in Haiti that we were able to help start a nursing school. I know that children who were child trafficked in Benin, that laws were changed because of the documentary that we helped support. And I look at my hardships and my pain in contrast to what Red Eye was able to do, and I think Red Eye moved the needle here in Tallahassee with businesses too, thinking, hey, we can do things differently. And that was always a dream of mine too, is to be a model of helping business owners think about their business as a force for good and not just a center for profit. And I've had countless conversations with different business owners to help them rethink their supply chain and their philanthropy and things like that. So all the good, all the bad, all the ugly, I would do it all again. Obviously, I would do it differently if I knew what I knew now. But I look at I look at it, and I just, like, I wouldn't be a professor at FSU without it. I wouldn't be able to be teaching social entrepreneurship every single day at FSU and without it. It's just, Red Eye has opened so many doors for me that would have never been available to me as if I would just stayed as an ED or a pastor. So that concludes my talk. If you'd like to connect with me on LinkedIn, I'm very active on LinkedIn. And also my email is mark@mcneesegroup.com if you want to ask me any questions. If you want to buy me a cup of coffee, I know a place, and it's not the one that I'm at right now. And I have a huge heart for nonprofits and executive directors. I know what it is to interact with boards. I know what an unhealthy board is, and I know what good boards can do. And so anything I can do to support you in your efforts, I am here, and I am local. So thank you very much. And are there any questions?
I do not see any, Dr. McNeese. Thank you very much for your candor and your insight. We appreciate it very much.
Absolutely.
I so appreciate, Dr. Manish, you taking your time and also your years of experience. I think all of us of nonprofits have had the good, the bad, the ugly, if we've been leading any organization or involved. And not just the good and bad and the ugly in a nonprofit, but if we've been in the business world, we've seen that as well. So appreciate that you shared that, that you were, as Angela said, appreciate your candor, your transparency. I would expect nothing less from you now that I've known you for a few years. Would not expect anything less from you, but also the lessons that are taken from that, because you also talked about Goodwill and how Goodwill has the clothing store and how they recently had the car wash, I think is what you were sharing. And so we're seeing some successful opportunities with the auxiliary, the for-profit auxiliary to nonprofit. So appreciate you joining us today. It's really good to see you again. I know you're
Yeah.
traveling a lot, nationally and internationally. Thank you so much for taking time to be the great speaker that you were today and sharing your experiences. We're so grateful to you for that.
Awesome. Thank you, Bernice, so much for inviting me. Thank you, Angela, and thank you everyone else for listening to me rant for a few minutes.
It's good to see you.
All right. Thank you.
All righty. Bye-bye.